Hi all, this video is going to go over your close read annotations for the short excerpt from The Outsiders. In total, you're going to have 4 questions. The way this video is going to work, I'm going to read one question and then read the passage depending on the paragraphs that are in the question and show you what I annotated for each section. When you're doing this on your own, my recommendation is you press the split screen button. That way, the questions show up on the left hand side and your text shows up on the right hand side. For this video, I'm not going to work in split screen mode. That way, just my annotations appear clearer for you and they're not scrunched on one side of the screen. So, with number one, as you reread The Outsiders, highlight specific textual evidence in paragraphs 1 through 7 that helped you infer Ponyvoy's point of view about the Socs. Use the annotation tool to record your inferences. So, specifically in these paragraphs, I'm looking for Ponyboy's point of view, his POV, about this rival gang. For this, also, you're going to want to have the numbers open for paragraphs 1 through 7, I made my annotations in yellow. I'll reread the paragraphs for us and then I'll go over each of my annotations. Excerpt from chapter 2. We were used to seeing Johnny banged up. His father clobbered him around a lot, and although it made us madder than heck, we couldn't do anything about it. But those beatings had been nothing like this. Johnny's face was cut up and bruised and swollen. There was a wide gash from his temple to his cheekbone. He would carry that scar all his life. His white t shirt was splattered with blood. I just stood there, trembling with sudden cold. I thought he might be dead. Surely no one could be beaten like that and live. Steve closed his eyes for a second and muffled a groan as he dropped on his knees beside Soda. Somehow, the gang sensed what had happened. Two Bit was suddenly there beside me, and for once his comical grin was gone, and his dancing gray eyes were stormy. Derry had seen us from our porch and ran toward us, suddenly skidding to a halt. Dally was there, too, swearing under his breath, and turning away with a sick expression on his face. I wondered about it vaguely. Dally had seen people killed on the streets of New York's West Side. Why did he look sick now? Johnny? Soda lifted him up and held him against his shoulder. He gave the limp body a slight shake. Hey, Johnny Cake. Johnny didn't open his eyes, but there came a soft question. Soda? Yeah, it's me, Soda Pop said. Don't talk. You're gonna be okay. There was a whole bunch of them, Johnny went on, swallowing, ignoring Soda's command. A blue Mustang fool. I got so scared. He tried to swear, but suddenly started crying, fighting to control himself, then sobbing all the more because he couldn't. I had seen Johnny take a whipping with a 2x4 from his old man and never let out a whimper. That made it worse to see him break now. Soda just held him and pushed Johnny's hair back out of his eyes. It's okay, Johnny Cake. They're gone now. It's okay. Finally, between sobs, Johnny managed to gasp out his story. He had been hunting our football to practice a few kicks when a blue Mustang had pulled up beside the lot. There were 4 Socs in it. They had caught him, and one of them had a lot of rings on his hand. That's what had cut Johnny up so badly. It wasn't just that they had beaten him half to death. He could take that. They had scared him. They had threatened him with everything under the sun. Johnny was high strung anyway, a nervous wreck from getting belted every time he turned around, and from hearing his parents fight all the time. Living in those conditions might have turned someone else rebellious and bitter. It was killing Johnny. He had never been a coward. He was a good man in a rumble. He stuck up for the gang and kept his mouth shut good around cops. But after the night of the beating, Johnny was jumpier than ever. I didn't think he'd ever get over it. Johnny never walked by himself after that, and Johnny, who was the most law abiding of us, now carried in his back pocket a 6-inch switchblade. He'd use it, too, if he ever got jumped again. They had scared him that much. He would kill the next person who jumped him. Nobody was ever going to beat him like that again, not over his dead body. So in these annotations, I made highlights in paragraph 7, in paragraph 6, and back in paragraph 1. Now, we're looking for what is Ponyboy's point of view about the Socs in this case, and really we're looking at how the Socs have made a change to Johnny. The first annotation I made is in paragraph 1, starting at I all the way through live. I just stood there trembling with sudden cold. I thought he might be dead. Surely no one could be beaten like that and live. The note I put with this one, Ponyboy, he's beginning the paragraph, our excerpt, showing his distress at Johnny's state after being jumped by the Socs. Clearly here we see a beating that Ponyboy thinks no one could recover from, setting it up for, hey, all Socs are bad, all Socs are evil characters. Continues with the reaction from other characters. And so, guys, every time I close down an annotation, it's going to jump me to the top. So bear with me with the scrolling. Paragraph 6 is very unique. It's the first time you hear that, hey, Johnny has been hit before. This is not the first time we've seen him beat. However, this is the first time we have heard him whimper and cry. So this line, I had seen Johnny take a whipping with a 2x4 from his old man and never let out a whimper. That made it worse to see him break now. Considering this part, what we see, Ponyboy tells the reader that Johnny has been beaten before. This is not the first time, but the beatings from his father were nothing compared to what the Socs have done to him. Johnny had never cried before. So, continuing on that theme where Socs are bad, Socs jump people, and even at this, they're making this character afraid. Johnny now has fear in him, which we really see change his personality when we get to paragraph 7. Because Johnny now has fear in him, how has he changed? And again, to look at this section, but after the night of the beating, Johnny was jumpier than ever. I didn't think he'd ever get over it. Johnny never walked by himself after that, and Johnny, who was the most law abiding of us, now carried in his back pocket a 6-inch switchblade. He'd use it too if he ever got jumped again. They had scared him that much. He would kill the next person who jumped him. Nobody was ever going to beat him like that again, not over his dead body. Here is where we see the change. Again, because Johnny now has fear in him, this is the quote unquote new Johnny, right? Ponyboy describes how the beatings by the Socs physically and mentally changed him. Physically, his face is scarred. Mentally, he has become jumpy and paranoid. He now carries a knife. This shows that the Socs have scared him. The Socs have changed Johnny. Ponyboy's point of view is leading us to believe that Socs are evil characters. Notice, how does this change when we get to question number 2? How do we start to begin to see a shift in Ponyboy's point of view? So focus question number 2 today. These annotations are going to be done in the color purple, and they're going to take us paragraphs 9 through 14. Here's the question. What textual evidence in paragraphs 9 through 14 help you infer that Cherry is beginning to influence Ponyboy's point of view about the Socs? Highlight text evidence, use the annotation tool to support your analysis. So I'm going to scroll down 9 through 14, and just as I did last time, I am going to read it one time through, and then I'll look at the 3 annotations I made in purple. Really, in this section, we are assessing dialogue. What is Ponyboy saying to Cherry, and what is Cherry saying to Ponyboy? I want you to notice how Ponyboy responds, how each response gets a little bit more sure, a little bit more agreeable to the point of view of Cherry. All socias aren't like that, she said. You have to believe me, Ponyboy. Not all of us are like that. Sure, I said. That's like saying all you greasers are like Dallas Winston. I'll bet he's jumped a few people. I digested that. It was true. Dally had jumped people. He had told us stories about muggings in New York that had made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But not all of us are that bad. Cherry no longer looked sick, only said, I'll bet you think the Socias have it made. The rich kids, the West Side Socias. I'll tell you something, Ponyboy, and it may come as a surprise. We have troubles you've never heard of. You want to know something? She looked me straight in the eye. Things are rough all over. I believe you, I said. We'd better get out there with the popcorn. Old Two-Bit'll think I ran off with his money. Notice, every time Cherry says something, Pony's response gets a little bit longer and longer and longer. Starts off saying, sure. One word response doesn't sound like he really believes. Once we get to 11 and she makes the comparison, hey, not all socials are bad. That's like saying all greasers are bad like Dallas. Ponyboy then takes that in. Huh, that's true. Dally is bad, but not all of us are that bad. Oh, I can start to see your point of view. It's unfair to say all greasers are as bad as Dallas Winston, which would be the same as saying, hey, all socias are as bad as the ones who jumped Johnny. And by the end, Ponyboy, what does he say? I believe you. Hey, I understand. You got problems. I've got problems. Maybe we're more alike than different or unalike. The annotations I've made again, these are all of Cherry's lines of dialogue. The first one, all socias aren't like that. You have to believe me, Ponyboy, not all of us are like that. What I said, this is Cherry's point of view about the socias. She states that they are not all bad. At this point, Ponyboy does not seem to believe her. Again, as evident by her just saying, sure. Again, not really taking into account what he's saying or what she's saying. My next one, and if I could read the quote first. I'm sorry, guys, about the jumps. Hold on, let me find my spot. That's like saying all you greasers are like Dallas Winston. I'll bet he's jumped a few people. And to this I put, Ponyboy begins to believe Cherry once she is able to make an example he can relate to. Ponyboy realizes that some people are bad, like Dally, but that does not mean that all people are bad. And notice again, he says that at the end of 12, and this is the turning point for him. Let me see if I can read 13 before clicking on my note. Cherry's last piece of dialogue. I'll bet you think the Socias have it made. The rich kids, the West Side Socias. I'll tell you something, Ponyboy, and it may come as a surprise. We have troubles you've never heard of. You want to know something? Things are rough all over. So, even though, yeah, it might seem that they got everything they need because they're rich, they still got problems. Problems you couldn't imagine because you're not in our shoes. What does Pony say in this part, or what does Cherry say? Cherry states that even though socias are the rich kids, this does not mean that they do not have problems. Ponyboy then states he believes her, which shows that he is starting to see her point of view, and again, as evident in 14. Now, what I highlighted were Cherry's lines because it's these lines that progress to change Ponyboy. And you can see that clearly in his responses from sure to I digested that, I began to believe it, not all of us are that bad, to finally that I believe you. And again, guys, sorry about the jumps. Every time I close down an annotation, it returns me to the top of the page. With that, let's go to question number 3. Question number 3 is a short one, so is question 4. Yay, 2 paragraphs each. Question 3. In paragraph 15, what evidence is there that Ponyboy's point of view about the socias is beginning to change? Highlight text evidence and use the annotation tool to explain your reasoning. So in 1 through 7, we see how evil those select socias were. 9 through 14, we hear, hey, not all socias are that bad. And now in paragraph 15, where do I see Ponyboy start to come to realize, okay, I can't make these big generalizations about this group of people. So, checking out 15. 15 too, you see the color. I did it in green. After the movie was over, it suddenly came to us that Cherry and Marcia didn't have a way to get home. Two Bit gallantly offered to walk them home. The west side of town was only about 20 miles away, but they wanted to call their parents and have them come and get them. Two Bit finally talked them into letting us drive them home in his car. I think they were still half scared of us. They were getting over it, though, as we walked to Two Bit's house to pick up the car. It seemed funny to me that Socias, if these girls were any example, were just like us. They liked the Beatles and thought Elvis Presley was out, and we thought the Beatles were rank and that Elvis was tough. But that seemed the only difference to me. Of course, greasy girls would have acted a lot tougher, but there was a basic sameness. I thought maybe it was money that separated us. So in this instance, you hear it right from Pony. He's saying, it seemed funny to me that socias were just like us. Sure, there's bad socias like the ones that jumped Johnny, just as there's bad greasers like Dally who's seen people murdered. Pony's line, this shows that Pony has flipped his point of view. Ponyboy now believes that the socias are just like the greasers. There are only a few differences. And again, that gets repeated in the second one. There was a basic sameness. I thought it was money that separated us. Ponyboy overall believes that the gangs are the same and that there is a and that if there is any major difference, then that can be attributed to money. So Ponyboy's belief, okay, we're more alike than unalike. The biggest difference between us, his own words, is the money part. And that jump to the top helps us out because now we're going to see Cherry's part. What does Cherry think is the main difference between greasers and socias? Question number 4. In paragraph 16, Cherry says, you greasers have a different set of values. You're more emotional. In contrast, she says that socias are sophisticated, cool to the point of not feeling anything. Nothing is real with us. Highlight text evidence collected through the excerpt that supports Cherry's point of view. Use the annotation tool to explain your choices. So I'm going to go down to 16, our final paragraph. I'm going to read this, and the annotations were made in red. No, Cherry said slowly when I said this, it's not just money. Part of it is, but not all. You greasers have a different set of values. You're more emotional. We're sophisticated, cool to the point of not feeling anything. Nothing is real with us. Sometimes I'll catch myself talking to a girlfriend and I realize I don't mean half of what I'm saying. I don't really think a beer blast on the river bottom is super cool, but I'll rave about one, to a girlfriend just to be saying something. She smiled at me. I never told anyone that. I think you're the first person I've ever really gotten through. So, in comparison, Cherry agrees, hey, money is part of what separates us, but more so it's our values. You guys value one thing, we value another thing. The other part, you guys are more emotional. We don't feel anything. You can definitely see this idea of greasers being emotional if you go back and you reread 1 through 7 and you see how each of the gang members reacts to Johnny when they find him after being jumped and beaten. You can see each one gets described in a different emotional manner to this incident. So Cherry tells us again. Cherry states she thinks the greasers are emotional, while the socias are not. That's their big difference. This is what makes them different. So the main differences between the socias and greasers is 1, money, and 2, emotions. The last part ends on a great line for us. Cherry is talking to Ponyboy. Cherry is a soch. Ponyboy is a greaser. She smiles at me. Sounds like she's happy. I never told anyone that. I think you're the first person I've ever really gotten through. You'd assume these two rival gangs, they can't talk to one another. But in this case, Cherry is smiling, talking to Ponyboy and saying, hey, I think you're the first person who's ever really understood me. And our final annotation, this final sentence tells the reader that socias and greasers can talk to one another. In the end, they're all kids and have more alike than they think. So you learn really in this passage not to make generalizations about groups of people. Some people might be bad, some might be good, but you can't paint a broad brushstroke over all people, right? You got to see them on an individual basis. With that, I'm going to move over to your writing prompt. And for this text, look what you're going to write to. Use textual evidence to make 3 inferences about how interacting with Cherry has changed Ponyboy's point of view about the greasers and the socias. So you need to make 3 inferences, 3 logical guesses as to Ponyboy's point of view by the end of the story. What does he think about socias? Consider which pieces of text evidence help you make these inferences and how your own prior knowledge supports them. Begin with a clear thesis statement. So you should start off Ponyboy believes that bump, bump, bump. Use your understanding of text evidence and point of view to organize and support your writing. So after you write your thesis, back it up with text evidence. Make sure you cite what paragraph is your text evidence coming from, and use transitions to show the relationship among your ideas. So your transition words again, right? First, next, lastly. Things we've been providing, things we've been practicing all year long. You see why I said provide, because that last part, and provide a conclusion that summarizes your main points. A conclusion, just one clean sentence, is fine with me. If you're wondering how you're being graded, you can click the rubric here. I'm assessing you. Can you make an inference? Can you spell? And can you use grammar and punctuation correctly? Total of 8 points, guys. And give me one more second to close down the rubric. My last little tip for success when you are writing, what you're going to want to do is click the split screen button. That way, all the annotations you made over on tab 1 show up here on the left hand side. Easy access for you to go back and to check out. When your writing is complete, press submit at the bottom. If we're meeting in person, feel free to ask me any questions you may have. And if we're not meeting in person, send me an email. With that, guys, good luck.